Hello and welcome to yet another session of IEF, that is India Employer Forum's Samvaad, our dialogue series where we bring together leaders to explore how the world of work is evolving. I'm Praveen Koshti, Head of Marketing at Teamly Services, and I will be your host today and the moderator for today's conversation on redesigning leadership, culture, and HR capacity. For those who are unversed or joining us for the first time, the India Employer Forum is a not-for-profit community that brings aspects of employment, employability, and ease of doing business at the forefront for preparing India for 100. Teamlease is the knowledge partner of IEF, and therefore I am there. We support India Employer Forum on different initiatives. And today, I'm very happy to say that I have Mr. Atulaya Goswami, who has joined us for this session today. Thank you, Atulaya, for joining us. I'm very, very happy and pleased to host you for the session today.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
So just to give you a debrief about Atulaya, he has over 20 plus years of experience with global giants such as Procter & Gamble and General Mills and so on and so forth. He has been a strategic HR leader who has mastered everything from large scale transformation to M&A and integration, and currently he is fractional CHRO. So I'm pretty sure he brings the experience of working with the founders and SMBs also. Right, Atulaya?
It's a different world now. Now I think it's very industry agnostic. So anything from a pre-IPO startup to a private equity invested company to a promoter-led company with turnover of anything from 50 crores to 1,000 crores. So pretty different game.
Wow. I'm pretty sure you have a lot of experience and I would enjoy talking to you today. So before we get into the discussion, let me just set the context very quickly. So corporate India is at the crossroad. Leadership expectations are shifting and culture is now a strategic weapon. To win, companies are ditching the rigid old way of HR for something leaner, more agile, and that can adjust itself to what is happening as of now. Enter fractional CHROs. So you bring that kind of experience from corporate to an agile fractional HRO, a CHRO kind of role. Pretty excited about it, Atulya. So Atulya, my first question is about leadership mindset and future readiness, because the world of work is changing, right? So you have coached and you have been a leader and a coach for global giants and fast moving startups now. Looking at the chaos in the market today, what is the one critical mindset that shifts organizations from in the standstill right now to building the leadership pipeline and surviving the disruptions, and how to be ready for the disruptions?
Thank you. I think that's a wonderful question, and I think I can only think of one word, which is agility. And the context to that is none of us know what's going to change tomorrow, right? So today, if you think about any change which is impacting your business, it could range anything from AI-led change to a multi-generational workforce, Gen Zs coming in, to Mr. Trump making some announcements in US which impact somebody in a Saharanpur in UP, where you're manufacturing something. So, the amount of changes and the pace of changes that you're seeing and the kind of instability which it creates, especially with the business models, just go back 5-6 years from now, COVID came in and all the business models were challenged, right? So companies who were into vacations started moving into something else and business models were challenged. So essentially, the point that I'm trying to make is the only thing that can change is your own strategy and your own agility, right? You don't necessarily control any of these changes, and they're all driven by external factors, inflation. Who would have imagined the gold rates to go at where they're sitting right now, right? So things are going to move at a much faster pace. These things are going to challenge your business models on and on and on, again and again. I think the only choice that is left with most of the businesses is to be predictive and be understanding how your economics and the geopolitics and the things around you will affect your business. I think that's one thing. The second is one has to be really agile, right? So simple example. Today you see a lot of memes around Gen Zs, right? But guess what? Gen Zs is going to be a majority of your workforce going forward, because Gen Ys will fade away, Gen Xs will fade away. Anyone who believes, of course, memes are great, but anyone who believes that they will not have a role to play, of course they'll have a role to play because they'll be part of your workforce. So how will the organization structure their own EVP, their own value proposition, branding to really attract that kind of talent is going to be a deciding factor in your workforce. Artificial intelligence coming in is going to challenge the way you do things, the way you challenge processes. That is going to change the composition of workforce. I was hearing one CIO the other day in one of the conferences. He mentioned about bots being in the system who have an employee code, right? So now you have a robot in the system who really has an employee code and a badge. So that's the kind of change that we're going to sit with. And of course, all the changes which happen because of geopolitics and announcements. I think agility is simply one mindset which everyone has to play with, because if you're not going to do that, you become another Nokia, right? So that's not what you're looking for. And you want to be moving with the changing times, and agility in business models, agility in the way you look at strategy, workforce, composition, technologies, transformation. So, yeah, one word, agility.
Very, very well summarized, actually, Itna. And it's at times scary and at times quite exciting, right? Depending on where you're sitting and looking at it, isn't it?
If you prepare for it, it's quite exciting. So, of course, any change is going to be scary. So, it always starts with the denial mode that, it's not really going to impact things. But the reality is, if you go back 20, 50 years from now, changes have always happened. It's not a new thing. But now the pace at which it is happening is very different, right? So today the talk of the town is what are the jobs or what are the skills which will be the kind of skills required in the future, right? What will humans do and what will AI do? So that is the kind of conversation happening, which probably never happened, right? Last 50, 60 years, we've never heard that conversation. We've only heard that digitization will happen. Today we are talking about complete replacement, right? So and we are already seeing that happening in the market. So yes, of course, it brings scare along with that, but agility also gives you the opportunity to bank upon it.
Correct, correct. And Atulaya, that brings me to very important aspect, because there is a Gen Z and the baby boomers and the others, those who are actually fading out slowly. There is the Gen Z or Gen Alpha, which is slowly going to come into the workforce.
Yeah.
And a very core thing which is going to see both these things is the middle management. Yeah. So my next question to you, Atulaya, is about middle management managers' effectiveness. So this is the sandwich generation of the corporate life, right? Is squeezed by the high level strategy from above and grit of execution from the below. And how do you coach these groups to stop just surviving in the pressure and start actually owning the culture? How do you do that?
I think it starts with very clear messaging on what you're expecting these teams to do. And a lot of times why we say it's the middle management model, because people don't necessarily understand the strategies which are coming from the top, right? So I think it's very important for any senior leadership to have them engaged, and whether it is a sales middle management, marketing middle management, HR, production, anything, right? So generally the goal setting exercise should take care of most of it, which is more around how do you really align on the goal setting process. That's the important buy-in to begin with. I think the second piece is around communicating them the right message at the right time on the strategies of the company, because if middle is not performing for you, strategies will never get executed, right? So top can ask for a lot of things, it will get lost at the middle, it will never reach down. So how do you integrate that in the form of communication? I think the third piece is how do you integrate the reward and recognition system with your what you're trying to drive, especially at the middle. That's another factor. The fourth one I feel is how do you look at middle management performance differentiation? So there are a lot of people in the middle management, but how many of them really have the potential to be groomed into senior leadership or move up the middle management ladder? So I think somewhere that's where people get lost in the system, that you have a lot of workforce, but no clear differentiation of how do you really look at top talent there, and how do you link your top-down messaging, rewards, recognition system to get the job done. I think that's a very important factor. And then how do you leadership develop those people? How do you really look at development of that talent to take on different skill sets, which would prepare them to perform not only their job but also become inspirational managers for their teams, because a lot of times middle management is also a function of strong performers who became people leaders but not necessarily very strong inspirational leaders. So how do you really get the leadership part of their competencies upgraded, and how do you make it more make them more inspirational managers, performers who get the job done through people, right? So I think those are some of the things. I've seen these challenges in the middle management, because the narrative a lot of times shifts because middle management, when they're not aligned, they talk a anti senior leadership tone, right? So boss to yahi bol raha hai karne ko, but we know the reality. It's not going to happen, right? So the moment those statements are made, I think a lot of strategies fizzle out. So I think it's very important to align to begin with, communicate, have a straightforward conversation, transparent communication around it, and try and groom that leadership with all the skill sets, tool sets, mindsets to really prepare them to lead teams, and then groom the people, grow the people who are your future leaders, inspirational leaders. I think that is the trick. Easier said than done, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, Atulya, that uh, it requires a leader like you to make this possible. Communication is still easy, that you have communicated. Probably rewards are also possible, but then aligning, grooming, getting the best out of them becomes something that requires the leaders, those who are making things happen. Very interesting points. In fact, I've taken notes out of this. So, and this actually, brings me to the next question about evolving the talent model. You have been with big organizations, and in fact, at Teamlease also, we have seen a lot of startups coming to us and asking for contingent workforce. So, my question is from that perspective, that HR used to be about just managing employees or getting more operational things about the workforce. Now it's more strategic. Now it's more ecosystem based. It's more about how do we make it a fixed cost versus variable cost. It's becoming more, practically speaking, strategic. So what is one capability shift that HR leaders must make today to handle this complexity without without disrupting things? How do you see it?
Yeah. So I think that's a great perspective. And I have always believed that HR has always been strategic, and there were always, any one people decision or any one business decision which impacts people has a long lasting effect on the company, right? So on morale and a lot of things. So it's not necessarily operational things only that HR does. I think one thing which probably HR will have to understand is be extremely predictive about how these changes that we're talking will have an impact on the workforce. And to your point, when you talk about contingent leadership, contingent workforce, that's actually one of the business models to deliver business strategy, right? So, and I'll start with a very simple example to say that if, let's say, there is tomorrow tariff on pharma imports from India and US, right? That has an impact on an India-based company, on their gross margins, on the way they operate, maybe on their capacities, maybe on their plans to start up new facilities, right? So there is an implication on that company. Now, I think it is for the HR person in the team or the HR leader to really understand, if this business change is happening, what is the people impact? Is this leading me to into a skill based? Do I need some changes on the skill sets? Do I need some changes on workforce model? Do I need more contingent, more flexibility? Do I need something else? So I think being able to predict how your people aspects will get impacted because of the various business challenges and the changes happening around you, that is going to be the real strategic game changer for any HR leader or any business leader, and exactly what the hidden scorecard of a CEO is for HR, right? So they are not interested in knowing your attrition numbers and your gender representation. That's dashboard, right? What they're interested in is my business delivering top line, bottom line or not? How is HR delivering that for me? Do I have the do I have the pipeline of top talent? What is going to give me sleepless nights is if I'm going to change the business model today, if I'm launching a new product, or if I'm entering a new geography, or if I'm doing a M&A, or if I'm shutting down something, is my organization ready for that change? Do I have a pipeline of leaders who can lead that change? Right. So those are the much larger strategic areas, workforce plan, right? So 3 years out from now, how is my future ready skill set workforce going to look like? What skills do I require? Am I going to workforce plan and say build, buy, borrow, bot? So to your point on how much will I build internally, how much will I buy from market, how much will I bought AI, how much of it will I borrow, which is your contingent workforce, right? So what is the workforce mix to get me there is all predictive. It's not for today, it's for the future. So leaders who will think 3 steps ahead, 3 years down, try and predict and try and look at business changes and see how the people aspects will get influenced and what can I do to influence that with my people strategy is something that will be the skill, I feel.
Wow, quite interesting actually. Uh, The other day I was talking to somebody regarding diversity and so on and so forth. And I realized that, you talked about it very well, that CEOs, even though there are dashboards and dashboard metrics on which you talk about attrition or talk about diversity, but CEOs, what CEOs care about, and it's an eye opener. I never thought about it that, there's a difference between the way it looking at a number versus the difference of moving or looking at future. Yeah, very very interesting point, Atulya. Uh, Atulya, very quickly, I would want to no conversation, be it marketing or tech or HR or ops today, has a conversation or buzz about AI. Yeah, so I would want to have your perspective because see, you have worked with diverse industries and you're working with smallest to the largest kind of organizations now. So I would want to have a perspective from you on the tech enabled strategy, you call it, or maybe the AI strategy you want to call it. How do you see, or what do you see that next 10 years, how it is going to change our way of working? And as a CH or the fractional CHRO or the HR leaders of the industry, what is the impact that you see coming in maybe next 10 years?
I really don't know the answer for next 10 years. I can only tell you how things are going to change the way I see it from my lens. 10 years is far way out, and I doubt if anyone can really predict that. What I see changing is operational roles will definitely get challenged. So today, as we talk, every organization who's more progressive and is more agile, going back to the first question, is trying to take a step back to say that, okay, let me look at my sales process, marketing, supply chain, logistics, finance, HR, and so on, right? Point A to point Z, process map it, and try and see what all can be done by through digitization, contingent, outsource, I all that is happening today, right? So one example from my previous assignment itself, right? So we looked at the whole talent acquisition process, and probably a lot of use cases you'll find there because it's very direct, it's black and white, right? So a lot of things are driven by the numbers that you hire. So processes were mapped to say that what all can be done through AI. So that's the reality of today. Companies are trying to look at automating things. Companies are trying to look at accuracy. And I would not say that we have reached there 100% because AI also commits mistakes. It's not that we have reached a full stage where everything happens in auto mode. Companies are trying to double it depending on what kind of maturity you have in the organization. Companies are starting to take those steps. Like, for example, one of the things we piloted was getting an AI coach. So now appraisal season, no need to do trainings per se for managers to how to give feedback or how to performance manage, because your coaches, AI driven coaches, you can ask questions. If you're having a tough employee to deal with, how to manage the message, how to draft the message, all this can be done by the AI coach, which is also voice to voice coaching kind of a thing for people managers. And parallelly, at the same time, of course, all the AI stuff which you see on talent acquisition, resume screening. So 1 lakh candidates apply, 10 seconds, top 10 can be done through screening and all those kind of things on ATS. So anything which reduces effort and does it in an efficient way and gives time back to my team to look at things with a very strategic lens is going to be the differentiator in the future. And that essentially means that the strategic roles will become more strategic. Meaning, and I remember doing a webinar which was about demystifying the HRBP role. And one of the things I said there was AI, so HRBP roles specifically, the business partner roles, they are your hedge against AI. And why I say that is because those are the roles which require a lot of consultative skills, strategic thinking, right? Communication with employees, working very closely with the CEO, working very closely with functions. But having said that, whatever operational part they were doing, whether it was your culture score assessment or data generation, data analytics, attrition, dashboards, all this thing can be done by AI tomorrow, or agentic AI for that matter, can actually simplify. And that's what companies are trying to do. So I see the size of workforce reducing drastically because of all this. And when I say size of workforce reducing, I mean to say the permanent FTE numbers may not be the way they look today, because you can easily imagine that if I had 50 people to do something today, it can be done by 20. But will those 30 people lose the job? May not be the case, because they will also upskill into something else. A lot of new opportunities may come in. So impact will be there. I think you'll see companies using more and more of AI. So today I can give you a very simple example from my own personal usage, right? So I don't take more than half an hour to prepare any presentation because I have ChatGPT, I have Gamma, I have Notebook LM. So all these tools help me get the job done in half an hour. And if I were to do it on my own, this would take a day probably, or maybe more than that, lots of iterations. Or I may hire an executive assistant to do it for me, which probably I may not think about doing, right? So there's a straight impact there. I don't need one resource to do that. So to cut the long story short, 10 years down, I don't know, but definitely what will change is companies will look for value addition, companies will look for simplification, companies will look for cost reduction over a period of time. Like, for example, payroll can be done by robotic process automation, is what I keep hearing. And that's the transformation that we are starting to see. So that's going to be very real in the coming days. And like I said, bots will be having an employee code. It's already happening. So I heard BNY and Persistent talk about that in one of the conferences. Not BNY, I think it was Persistent who was talking about that. So that's what it is. It's going to happen.
Very interesting. At the same time, Atulya, sometimes I feel that, we are doing so much of automation or so much of bot generated content, at least when I see on LinkedIn. I feel that, no, it's more, I see a need for more human to human conversation. That's what I look at. And in fact, that's the kind of conversation we are also having right now, right? So, Atulya, before we move further, one thing that, I keep on hearing when I talk to people like you, those who are in the industry for 20 odd years, they talk about, multi-generational workforce. So we have about multiple generations, 3, 4, 5 generations under one roof. Everyone has their own different thought process. Their growth have been different. They look at life differently. They have different purposes. So in your experience, what are the core people practices that actually bridge this gap and create a cohesive, high performance work culture?
When you have multi-generational workforce, that's the question.
Yeah, correct.
And I can tell you one thing from my experience. So I speak a lot at institutes, and I'm also visiting faculty in some of the business schools. So I engage very closely with Gen Zs on campuses, and while I teach them HR as well. So one very common question I ask them, and no surprises there, I ask them the 4 5 engagement questions. So will you join my company if I don't give you meaningful work? Answer is no. Will you join my company if I don't pay you well? Answer is no. Will you join if I don't give you inspirational leaders to work with? Answer is no. Will you join? So think about all the engagement levers which have always been kind of Bible, preamble, constitution, whatever you may want to call it. I don't think that's going anywhere. That's still the same. I think what has changed here is, so your basic bread and butter, you have to get it right. If
Yeah.
people are joining in, they are expecting you to give them meaningful work, which gives them the kick to come to office, or a leader to work with who really knows how to drive performance, or who really knows how to take care of people in the right way. Or you still need people to be paid well, recognized, rewarded for their contributions. People still need flexibility, people still need work life balance, right? So all the engagement drivers are not really changing. I think what is changing is the degree of what is important for which generation. Meaning, if you look at my generation, probably I represent millennials, more on the Gen Y side of it. We'll be very comfortable attending a workshop for 2 days. But if you go to a Gen Z, they'll say do a 30-minute bite-sized video, which nothing more than that. I don't want to sit in the whole session for 2 days, or even for one day, or even for 2 hours for that matter, because their attention span is very different. Now, when you look at work life balance, flexibility, again, the outlook would be very different. Somebody like us, probably in our generation, would say, okay, I'm comfortable coming to office 3 days a week, 4 days a week. But many roles and many jobs people will make the choice of joining your organization basis, whether you have work from home facility or hybrid facility or not, right? So that's the way they will look at it. So how your employee value proposition, meaning when you keep the employee at the center, whether it's a Gen Z, X, Y, depending on what generation you're presenting, is this really meaningful for everyone in some form or the other? Is something which every organization will have to take a step back and think. Now, for example, I remember, and this cuts across all your people systems. So how you hire, how you communicate, how you grow careers, how you look at internal transfer opportunities, how you learn, how you reward, right? So for example, if I'm somebody who's a baby boomer or a X, superannuation and retirals might be very exciting for me. But somebody who joins the company today will say, I would prefer a stock option, or I would rather prefer a take home higher than the the superannuation. So how will your reward system give that flexibility? So changing times, changing strategies, I think how much flexible can you be across multiple generations to accommodate? Because I think the more we live in denial of criticizing a particular generation and saying that hey, they don't understand us, we have a different way of operating, is not going to serve the purpose. Because end of the day, they are going to be part of your organization. You will not be continuing the organization forever. So I think now is the time to take that step back and revisit your talent strategy, revisit how you talk to them, how you drive your people processes to get the job done. So I don't know if that answers or not, but every employee from a different generation at the center point to really understand. And I think one last thing from my side on this would be also to communicate with these people separately in smaller groups to understand what they are really thinking. Because I think one area where HR has started failing a lot in last 10 years or so, I can say a lot of us have become laptop managers. A lot of us have become meeting managers, right? So if you look at our work schedules, we'll be spending 12 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours on laptop meeting, Teams, Zoom. But how much do we talk to these people to really understand? So that's where you have the edge over AI. And that's exactly what we're not doing. And in fact, when you talk to them, you get at least 2, 3 points which they are asking for, which will never come in the survey. People will not talk all these things in the survey, but they'll be very comfortable talking one-on-one. So that high touch somewhere has to be done to also know what they're thinking.
Yeah. Atulaya, one thing, you answered that question, and in fact, I've taken notes. Adjust with generation as one pointer note and revisit your talent strategy. And the third point that you have just spoken about is actually, in my MBA, one of our professors, Professor Bowman Muradian, he taught us operations improvement or operations research. He used to talk about go and meet people.
Yeah.
He used to call it Goya. It had to have some, full form of it. Actually, that's what you're talking about, right? And it's a proven practice that talking to people is far more important. That's what I was actually talking about a while back when we talked about AI. That people to people conversation and engagement is far more important rather than just, being digital. It was a great conversation with you, Atulya, and I would look forward to meeting with you sometime in person over coffee or something. But the first thing that you told about was about succession planning, communication, aligning, grooming your talent, rewarding them right. And actually that is coming out to the multi-generational workforce also. That, the reward system for a baby boomer or Gen X or to some extent to a Gen Y can be a different reward system, but the same reward system may not work for the next generation or alpha and next generations, right? So that is one thing. In fact, one point that I noted and I could not touch upon on that is inspirational versus performers, or inspirational as well as performers. So bringing or building the middle management which is inspirational, at the same time they are performers also. So that's very, very, it touched upon so much that I just took it as a note. Unfortunately, I missed on speaking about it. So thank you so much for your time, Atulya. It was indeed a great pleasure speaking with you. And I'll connect with you once again for more conversations like this. It's pleasure having you here, Atulya.
Thank you so much. And I also enjoyed the conversation. And